I came home early from a business trip to find my husband's stuff gone. His mom said, "He's staying with us now. He couldn't take your ambition." I smiled and replied, "Then he'll love the press release going out tomorrow." I just became CEO and his name's off all our properties. My name's Riley Penrose. I'm 43 years old and, until recently, I thought I had everything figured out. I live in Richmond, Virginia, not far from where I grew up. I've always liked order, clean lines, neat plans, things that make sense. I guess that's why real estate development spoke to me. The thrill of taking a rough, empty lot and shaping it into something real. Something solid. Something that didn't just sit there, it meant something. That's how my marriage started, too. With that same feeling of promise. Like we could build something worthwhile together. Like it would hold. Nolan and I had been married 9 years. We met at a networking event in DC. He was charming, well-dressed, and had this easy laugh that made people feel like they'd known him forever. I just closed my first major commercial deal at the time, and he told me it was SXY watching a woman win. That should have been a red flag, now that I look back. But at the time, I smiled like a fool and gave him my number. 6 months later, we were inseparable. A year after that, married. I didn't see it unraveling. Not all at once. It was more like watching wallpaper peel in slow motion. At first, you don't even notice. Then one day, you realize it's hanging off the wall and the room doesn't feel like yours anymore. We started Penrose and Holt together 4 years into the marriage. Technically, we were equal partners. But everyone knew I was the engine and the architect. Nolan had a good eye for people, sure, and he could make small talk like nobody else. But I was the one in meetings at 2 a.m. I was the one reading contracts, chasing permits, negotiating leases, managing architects, and overseeing budgets. Nolan liked brunch. But I loved him. And because I loved him, I convinced myself that sharing everything, even credit, was the right thing to do. The last real conversation we had was 3 weeks ago, the night before I left for a business trip to Boston. He was quiet, scrolling through his phone on the couch while I packed. "Want me to bring anything back?" I'd asked casually. He shrugged. "Nah, just get home safe." I should have known. I should have seen it in the way he didn't look up. In the way he said home, like it wasn't ours anymore. The trip was supposed to last 4 days. It ended a day early. The final session was canceled, so I took an earlier flight. Something about getting home early gave me this childish excitement, like I was about to surprise him with a gift. I even picked up cannoli from Mike's Pastry at Logan Airport. He loved them. I remember pulling into our driveway around 6:30 p.m. on a Thursday. The lights were off. At first, I thought he was just out at the gym or running errands. I walked in, dragging my suitcase behind me, calling his name. The house was too quiet. Something felt off. Not wrong, exactly, just empty. It took me a few minutes to notice the details. His coat wasn't on the hook. The shoes he always left by the door? Gone. No keys in the bowl. No coffee mug in the sink. Still, it didn't hit me until I opened the closet and saw it. Or rather, didn't see it. His side of the closet cleaned out. No clothes, no shoes, not even the watch box I bought him last Christmas. At first, I thought he was moving stuff, reorganizing maybe. But when I checked the drawers, the bathroom cabinets, and his home office, it was all gone. Every trace of him. The only thing left was a plain white envelope on the kitchen island. Just my first initial. R. I stood there for a long time, just staring at it. Then I opened it. It wasn't handwritten. Nolan had typed it out like a memo. Like a polite breakup email to a colleague. He said he needed space. That he had been feeling lost. That he didn't know who he was anymore. That living with me, being married to me, made him feel like he was drowning in my shadow. That he wanted to rediscover himself. There was no mention of love. No apology. Just a hollow summary of why he decided to disappear while I was out of town. He didn't even sign it. Just a dash at the bottom. That was the moment I stopped breathing for a second. Not because I was shocked, somewhere deep down I had known. But because I realized how cowardly he really was. He couldn't even say goodbye to my face. I grabbed my keys, drove 25 minutes to his mother's house in Mechanicsville. She answered the door like she'd been waiting. "Riley," she said with this fake concern in her voice. "You didn't have to come all the way out here." I didn't step inside. "Is he here?" I asked. She folded her arms. "He's staying with us now. He couldn't take your ambition anymore." Those exact words. Like a script she'd rehearsed. I just stared at her. My ears were ringing. Ambition. That was the problem? I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout. He lived off my ambition. He thrived on it. He bought $300 sneakers with money I negotiated. He watched Netflix while I made us rich. Instead, I smiled. Not because I was okay, but because I remembered what was scheduled to go live the next morning. Well, I said calmly. Then he's really going to love the press release going out tomorrow. She blinked. I'm the new CEO, I said. And his name's off all the properties. Every last one. I turned and walked back to my car. I didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I poured a glass of wine, sat on the edge of the bathtub, and scrolled through every text message he'd ever sent me. All the sweet nothings. The late-night pep talks. Though I'm so proud of you messages after my interviews. They felt like lies now. Carefully curated, pleasant lies. What kind of man tells you he loves you, lets you carry him through life, and then walks out the moment you rise higher than him? Not a strong man. Not a real partner. I thought I'd be devastated. But all I felt was clarity. Like fog lifting. The next morning, Penrose and Holt officially became Penrose Development. The rebranding was already in the works. I just fast-tracked it. Nolan didn't know, but I'd quietly been buying back his shares for the past 8 months through a private deal with a silent investor. He never paid attention to the details. He trusted the wrong person. Me. And you know what? I don't feel bad about it. He gave up the right to feel betrayed the moment he packed a bag and left like a thief in the night. I don't know what's ahead. I'm not going to pretend I've healed. But I know this. He left because I was too much. And for the first time in a long time, I am more than enough. The thing about heartbreak at this age is that it doesn't knock you flat the way it did in your 20s. It doesn't come in with fireworks and dramatic sobbing. It comes quietly, in moments. Like when I poured coffee the next morning and reached for the second mug out of habit. Or when I walked past the laundry room and saw the hook where he always hung his gym towel. Or when I opened the fridge and noticed that the almond milk I bought for him was still half full. Little things. Unremarkable to anyone else. But each one felt like a splinter in my chest. Work became my refuge. I threw myself into it with the kind of energy that had once fueled our early success. The difference now was that I didn't have to soften myself. I didn't have to play small. I didn't have to check the tone of my emails or double-check that he got credit in meetings we both attended. For the first time in years, I could be fully in control. And people noticed. In the weeks that followed the rebrand, business actually picked up. Clients appreciated the clearer direction. There were no delays caused by missed meetings or miscommunications on Nolan's end. It was just me, my team, and a streamlined vision. Still, the rumors started swirling. I heard things. Quiet things. Whispers at networking events. Raised eyebrows from former associates. Heard Nolan walked out. Tough break. Funny how she took the company and the spotlight. Do you think she forced him out? The worst part wasn't the gossip. It was the pity. The assumption that I was the wounded party. Or worse, that I had done something to deserve it. I didn't respond to any of it. But inside, a part of me was simmering. Because I knew Nolan. And I knew he wouldn't just walk away. Not without trying to spin a story that made him look noble and me look like the villain. That call came 2 weeks later. It wasn't from him. It was from Ava, one of our junior managers. Young, bright, and loyal as hell. She was whispering like she didn't want someone to overhear. Riley, I just thought you should know. I was approached. Approached by who? Someone at Briar and Locke. They said Nolan gave them my name. Said you were stepping down? I felt the blood drain from my face. He said what? That you were scaling back. That he was going to start something new and take a few of us with him. He made it sound like you were unstable. I didn't say anything for a moment. My nails dug into the palm of my hand. Don't worry, Ava added quickly. I didn't believe him. I told them I was staying with you. Thank you, I said softly, hanging up. I sat there in my office for a long time, staring at nothing. So this was how he was going to play it. He was going to take the lie public. He was going to paint me as the ruthless one, the unstable ex, the woman too obsessed with power to hold on to her marriage. And he was going to try to poach the people I trained, mentored, and lifted. It was almost funny in a way. The man who once called himself the face of the company was now trying to build his own version, using the blueprint I drew. That night, I called Jules Chung. She'd been my roommate in college. Now she was the managing partner of a boutique investment firm in Atlanta. She was the one who helped me quietly buy back Nolan's shares over the past year. You were right, I told her. He's not done. He's never done, she replied. Guys like that? They don't want power. They want to borrow it. And when you stop lending, they throw a tantrum. I exhaled slowly. Think I need to make some calls. Need me to fly up? Not yet, I said. But keep a bag packed. The next few days were a blur of meetings and strategy sessions. I had to move fast, plug any holes in our org chart, reassure our clients, and issue a subtle but firm internal memo. Penrose Development was not merging, dissolving, or restructuring. Anyone who claimed otherwise was either misinformed or acting in bad faith. Behind the scenes, I reached out to our legal team. I didn't want a war, but if Nolan pushed, I'd be ready. The real K-Niffy came later. I was having lunch with Elena, my longtime assistant, practically family at this point, when she pulled out her phone and hesitated. "You okay?" I asked. She looked uncomfortable. "You probably don't want to see this, but I think you should." It was a post from Nolan. A smiling photo of him outside some trendy cafe, laptop open, latte in hand. The caption read, "Sometimes you have to leave a cage to learn to fly. Big things ahead. Stay tuned." The comment section made my stomach turn. "She didn't deserve you. You were always the brains. Glad you're finally free. And the worst, build your own empire. You made her look good long enough." Elena looked like she was waiting for me to explode. But I didn't. I just scrolled. Numb. Because for the first time, I realized that this wasn't just about business or heartbreak. This was about erasure. He wasn't content to leave. He wanted to rewrite the past. I didn't sleep that night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering how many more shoes had to drop before this stopped feeling like free fall. My phone buzzed around 2 a.m. It was a text. From Nolan. "Didn't expect the rebrand to be so cold. Guess that's who you really are." I stared at it for a long time. He wanted a response. He wanted a reaction. He wasn't going to get one. I turned the phone over, face down, and went back to staring at the ceiling. I wasn't going to fight him on his terms. He wanted a war of words, social posts, whispers. I had better weapons. I had results. I had loyalty. I had me. But still, something inside me was shifting. Hardening. I wasn't just cleaning up his mess now. I was preparing. Because if Nolan thought this was over, he hadn't been paying attention. I didn't spend the last decade building an empire just to let him burn it down because his ego couldn't handle the heat. And now, I was done being quiet. There's a quiet kind of rage that seeps into you when you realize someone you loved is actively trying to erase you. Not just leave, not just forget, but rewrite. For the next week, I kept my head down and worked harder than I ever had. I met with every team lead, every department. I listened. I asked questions. I made sure they knew where we were going and what we stood for now. I told them we weren't backing down. Not from growth, not from integrity, and sure as hell not from someone else's insecurities. Still, I wasn't naive. I knew Nolan would keep trying. That's who he was. He'd always had this need to be seen, not just liked, but admired. Respected. Worshipped, even. And when people stopped doing that, he got mean. And in this case, dangerously strategic. The first real blow came from a direction I didn't expect. One of our biggest clients, a long-standing partner in our commercial development deals, Metroland Group, requested a sudden meeting. I'd worked with them for years. They respected me, trusted me, or so I thought. I sat across from their lead executive, Carmen Bautista, in a sleek glass-walled conference room in Arlington. Her body language was off. She kept shifting in her seat, glancing down at papers she barely touched. "We've been reviewing our options for the new West Broad development," she started slowly. "And we've had an offer from another team that's compelling." I already knew where this was going. "Nolan." She looked uncomfortable. "Yes, of course." He must have contacted them directly. Promised them something shinier. Maybe cheaper. Maybe more PR-friendly. I leaned back and folded my hands calmly. "Carmen, you've seen what I've built. You've seen how we operate. You know our track record." "I do," she admitted. "But there's a lot of pressure coming from our board. They're questioning the internal conflict." He walked away, I said, keeping my voice measured. "He's not the business. He never was." Carmen sighed. "It's not about that. It's about perception. Stability. Optics." I nodded slowly. "You do what you need to do. But just remember, Nolan's good at showing up for the photo, not the foundation." When I left the building, I stood on the sidewalk for a long time. Just breathing. Not crying. Not angry. Just studying myself. Because I realized, again, that this wasn't just about one man. It was about a lifetime of people assuming that my success came with asterisks. Like I'd had help. Like someone else gave me a leg up. Like the wins weren't mine alone. And now the same man who had ridden those wins like a coattail was trying to convince the world that he built the train. The next few days were a mix of fury and fatigue. I started waking up earlier. Not because I wanted to, but because sleep didn't come easy anymore. My mind was always working, calculating moves, preparing responses, reading body language in every meeting for hints of wavering loyalty. I hated it. I hated that I was living like this, constantly looking over my shoulder. That's not who I was before. I was sharp, yes, focused, but I'd always believed in people, trusted my instincts. Now, I second-guessed every kind word, every promise. But through all that, there were also glimmers of loyalty, acts of quiet defiance. Karina, one of our project heads, marched into my office unannounced one morning, holding a manila folder. "He called me," she said bluntly. I didn't ask who. He offered me a raise. Said I deserved to be more than Riley's girl. She tossed the folder onto my desk. "So I thought you should know." I opened it. Inside was a detailed breakdown of a project timeline, one we hadn't even finalized yet. Nolan had somehow gotten his hands on it. She looked at me, angry on my behalf. "He's fishing, Riley. And someone's feeding him." I nodded, jaw tight. So now I had a leak. That night, I didn't go home. I sat in my car outside the office for hours, parked across the street, engine off. Just thinking. The city buzzed around me, cars, neon lights, a busker playing something soft on the corner, but I felt like I was underwater. I thought about the beginning. About how Nolan used to look at me with awe when I talked about zoning laws or market data. About how he'd say things like, "God, you're incredible," when I closed deals no one thought I could. About how proud he seemed, until the spotlight started shifting. Until people started looking at me and only me. He used to be proud. Then he got jealous. Then he got resentful. And now? Now he was trying to destroy me. But I wouldn't let him. The next morning, I called Jules again. "I need to trace something," I told her. "And I need to find out who's been talking to Nolan." "You think he's got someone inside?" she asked. "He definitely has someone inside." "Okay, give me names." I listed the departments and people who had access to our strategic files. It was a short list. Then I paused. "There's another thing," I said. "What?" "He's reaching out to my family." Jules went quiet. "What?" "He messaged my cousin last week. Asked if we'd talked. Asked if she knew how I was doing." She swore softly. "He's not just sabotaging your business. He's trying to get into your narrative." Exactly. And that was what scared me most. It wasn't about a divorce anymore. It was about control. I started sleeping with my laptop next to the bed. Not because I was paranoid, though maybe I was, but because I needed to feel like I was doing something. Anything. There were nights I sat on my back porch with a blanket wrapped around me and just stared out at the dark, wondering how a person could feel both completely exhausted and utterly wired at the same time. I wasn't broken. Not yet. But I could feel the cracks forming. And the truth was, I didn't know how many more hits I could take before something gave way. I always believed that when things fell apart, they did so quickly. But it turns out, some endings creep in slow. Like rot. Like fog. But some endings? You choose them. And I was ready to choose mine. 2 weeks after Jules started digging, she called me with a name. "Shauna," she said. "Your operations assistant." She's been forwarding files to a private email address tied to an account under Nolan's name. We've confirmed at least 6 leaks over the last 3 months. I wasn't surprised. Shauna had always been professional, friendly, efficient. She laughed at my jokes, stayed late without being asked, and brought me green smoothies unprompted. I mistook that for loyalty. I should have looked closer. I didn't confront her right away. I had a better idea. I waited 3 days. During that time, I crafted a document, a fictional proposal for a luxury waterfront project in Annapolis. The numbers were inflated, the specs unrealistic. But it looked legitimate. Very tempting. I left it accidentally visible in a shared folder only accessible to department heads and their assistants. I didn't even have to wait a full day. The file was opened from Shauna's machine at 9:42 a.m. And by noon, Jules texted me. He bit. I leaned back in my chair, staring out my office window. Gotcha. 2 days later, Nolan's new firm announced an upcoming project complete with a mock-up eerily similar to our Annapolis plan. It was flashy, overreaching, and completely implausible in that market. But they were proud. They pushed it to investors. Even got coverage in a couple small trade publications. I watched it unfold in silence. All I had to do now was let them run with it. Meanwhile, I met with our board. Presented evidence of internal breaches, reaffirmed our commitment to ethical practices, and made it clear that anyone attempting to compromise the business would be held accountable. I let them see everything, including Shauna's file access logs. She was gone by end of day. No drama. No tears. Just security walking her out quietly. I didn't even look up from my desk. Nolan didn't call. But I knew he knew, And then, I made my real move. I hosted a press briefing the following Monday. Nothing dramatic. Just a modest media brunch. Local journalists. Longtime investors. A few developers we'd partnered with in the past. The highlight? An announcement of a partnership with the Virginia Urban Housing Initiative, a major redevelopment project focused on sustainable community living across 3 underserved districts. It had been in the works for over a year. Under wraps. And now it was ours exclusively. Government backing. High-profile endorsements. And a long-term impact plan that positioned Penrose Development as the name in urban reinvention. There was no mention of Nolan. But the timing, the scale, and the legitimacy of the project made it very clear where the real business was being done and who was doing it. That same evening, Nolan's company released a half-hearted update, retracting their Annapolis plan, citing unexpected market resistance. Translation? They'd been exposed. Quietly. Completely. And they had nothing to fall back on. About a week later, I ran into him. I was at a dinner party hosted by a mutual acquaintance in DC. I hadn't known he'd be there. But the second I walked into the room, I felt it. That hush. That subtle energy shift. He was standing near the fireplace, drink in hand, talking to some guy in finance. He looked good, polished, relaxed, maybe even confident. But when he saw me, his face shifted. Just slightly. I smiled politely. Walked past him. Didn't stop. Later, he found me near the bar. "Riley," he said, casually, like we were old friends. "Heard the news. Big move with the city." I sipped my drink, didn't give him anything. He waited a beat. "You always did play the long game." I finally looked at him, held his gaze. "And you always bet on the wrong hand." He laughed, but there was no real humor in it. Just something hollow, tired. Then he leaned in slightly, like he was going to say something personal, something raw. But I stepped back. "I have a meeting in the morning," I said lightly. "You understand." And I walked away. A month later, his firm downsized. 2 key investors pulled out. A third filed a complaint after realizing they'd been pitched stolen material. I didn't even have to lift a finger. All I had to do was wait. Because Nolan thought the business was about power, image, noise. He never understood that real power is quiet. It doesn't flinch. It doesn't chase headlines. It builds. And by the time the dust settled, Penrose Development had 3 new projects lined up. Our team was stronger, tighter, and fully mine. There's no neat bow on something like this. No perfect sense of justice. But sometimes the win isn't loud. It's in the silence that follows the storm. The kind that lets you breathe again, not because you escaped, but because you held your ground. I didn't burn anything down. I just stood still while he ran in circles and let him bury himself in the hole he thought he was digging for me. Let him sit in the echo of his own choices. And I kept building. Because I always build.